Evening with a Legend is a series of presentations exclusive to legends of the famous 24 Hours of Le Mans, giving us an opportunity to bring a piece of Le Mans to you. By sharing stories and highlights of the big event, you get a chance to become part of the legend of Le Mans with guests from different eras of over 100 years of racing.
Tonight, we have an opportunity to bring a piece of Le Mans to you, sharing in the legend of Le Mans with guests from different eras of over 100 years of racing. And as your host, I'm delighted to introduce a racing icon, considered by many to be the greatest race car driver in the history of the sport. Born in Italy, emigrating to the United States, and beginning his career racing stock cars in Pennsylvania at the age of 19, he won races in sports car, sprint car, stock car, formula cars, on ovals, road courses, drag strips, on the dirt, and on the pavement. His achievements are legendary. The world watched as he won the Daytona 500, the Indy 500, and ultimately the Formula One World Championship, an unprecedented trifecta. Mario Andretti took the checkered flag 111 times during his career, a career that stretched 5 decades and across 6 continents, and includes 9, that's right, 9 entries in the famed 24 Hours of Le Mans. And with that, I'm your host, Crew Chief Eric from the Motoring Podcast Network, welcoming everyone to this Evening with a Legend. And so without further ado, Mario, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Well, Mario, let's start off by talking about your road to Le Mans. Your first visit was in 1966 with the Holman Moody Ford GT40 Mark II with co-driver Lucien Bianchi. So tell us about that first trip to Le Mans. How did racing at Le Mans compare to everything you'd done up until that point?
Well, first of all, I really look forward to doing Le Mans. At that point, I had only done one long distance race, which was the Daytona 500 in 66 with Ferrari. But the opportunity to go to Le Mans with Ford, there was a big effort there. The objective was obviously to win it, and they did finally. So anyway, I welcomed the idea, and Lucien Bianchi was quite the veteran of long distance racing, and he and I became very, very close friends, over the time. The experience was good, but we didn't finish.
The GT40, it was still new. It was evolving. We've all seen the movie Ford versus Ferrari. Was it a lot like that, going to Le Mans with that car?
Well, I had done a lot of testing. I was part of the testing team. So I was involved in all of the running that was done. So I had a pretty good feel for the car, except that, as I said, in that particular event, they put in actually there was one later where they put in the wrong pads, on the side.
Oh, we'll talk about that.
Yeah, and actually in 66, I think we had an engine issue. But I felt comfortable. I felt that we had a good shot at doing well. Because again, I felt good in the car, and the following year, Bruce McLaren and I won the 12-hour Sebring. So I was familiar. It's not that I didn't have extensive road racing experience, but I was coming on pretty good. In the testing, my speed was actually comparable to anyone there.
So would you say that first trip, Le Mans, was intimidating? That was probably the longest lap you'd ever driven, right, on any course? Or had you done other courses like the Nürburgring or something like that up until that point?
No, that was for me. That was the first. And yeah, it can be intimidating if you let it be intimidating. It's just that obviously any potential negative out of your mind, no question. You approach it the way you should approach any new experience, if you will. I felt that we had a great team behind us. There was plenty of time to get familiar with the course. Yes, challenging, daunting, high speed. Yes, all of that, all of those things that I love because, I used to do the banking at Daytona, flat at 220 miles an hour. So the speed was not a factor, but any new experience is daunting, no question. And, again, the fact that I really, really looked forward to it, I think makes a big difference. So I embraced it in the most positive way.
Well, you brought it up, Mario. Le Mans 1967, that was your second trip to the famed 24 Hours. And you hinted at it. There was a bit of a mistake made in the pits in the middle of the night. So what happened? Describe it for us.
Yeah, it was Lucian Bianchi and I against Zan Gurney and AJ Foyt. I was in the same stint as AJ Foyt, and I thought that I probably could do a bit better. I had, more experience with the car, and I was putting quite a bit of distance between us. And especially it was wet during part of the stint. Actually, I did 2 stints at that point. And then when I handed the car to Lucian, he didn't know that we had a brake issue, but we knew how to deal with it. And there was a lot of vibration, but we had to live with it up to a certain point. But he was not aware of that. I had almost a lap advantage on AJ at that point when Lucian took over. Then I'm still sitting at the wall because I was pretty well spent. It was daunting 2 stints. And all of a sudden he comes in and he's discussing the situation with one of the mechanics, like during practice. I said, there's a race going on. But he wanted the brake pads changed, which that was not going to change anything. It was that the discs needed to be changed. But it wasn't the time, is what I'm saying. But since he asked for something, all of a sudden they're changing the pads. And I was a bit upset, so I pulled him out. I said, I'm going back in. And, of course, full load of fuel. And unbeknown to me, later on, I'm coming over the rise, going to the Dunlop chicane and braking. The car just turned to the right. That's it. So we crashed, and it was all over. Actually, I busted some ribs and whatever. That was the race. That was unfortunate. Later on, when they gathered all the pieces together, they found out that one of the pads on the right front was put on backwards, metal to metal. Since the disc was cracked, it caught. And with a full load of fuel, we used to run, a lot of fuel in those days, and it took the wheel right out of my hands. And then I went into the dirt bank and basically destroyed the front of the car.
So after that incident in 1967, you didn't return to Le Mans until after completing your seasons in Formula One. We're talking a gap of 1967 all the way up to 1982. So let's talk about how Le Mans evolved during that time period. When you returned, what was it like, walking down the paddock into pit lane? How had Le Mans changed since 1967?
Obviously things evolve, that everything just changes for the better, if you will. It'd be, the infrastructure is different and the cars, rules and all those things. It's not that I had been away from the sport, so I would change it with that. I expected things to be different, of course. I felt quite comfortable in that situation as well because we were with a Kramer Porsche, great experienced team and so on and so forth. And Philippe Alliot was our third driver, very good. And of course, there was Michael. It was his second experience, but the first experience we never got to start. Well, it's a long story there. We were on a grid and they said the car was illegal. So anyway, I had a little bit of everything as far as experiences there.
That was with the Mirage M12 Ford?
Yes.
And in 82, that was still pre-bus stop, pre-chicane on the Mulsanne. So you were able to go full tilt down the straightaway.
Full tilt, yeah.
So did you guys make it through qualifying in 82? You just didn't make it to the grid?
Yeah, we made it through qualifying. We were on the grid. We were ready to start, and all of a sudden, one of the marshals come here, and he's pulling me out of the car. And I said, what's going on? But anyway, one thing led to another, that they deemed our car illegal because they said that some of the oil coolers, intakes and so forth were changed from qualifying to the race. So I was not aware of any of that. So they pulled us out of the race. That would have been Michael's debut, my son Michael's debut at the time.
And that would have also been the first time that you guys co-drove together.
Indeed, yes.
But not the last time.
Not the last time.
1982, if I do my math right, and I was doing some research on this, a Porsche 924 GTR Carrera took your place. I'm wondering if that was one of our previous legends that were on the show. Maybe that was the Jim Busby, Doc Bundy team that took your spot after the car was disqualified, because I heard a little bit of that story as well.
Well, I suppose that was it, but I wasn't too interested in that.
Speaking of that, you've talked about the breakdowns and the pads and the disqualifications, all these situations with the car. And one of the biggest themes that has come up with other guests on this program is mechanical sympathy. So would you say that's maybe one of the most important parts about endurance racing, especially racing at Le Mans?
No question. It's a mouthful when you say 24 hours. The mechanical side plays, and this is when Porsche comes in or Ferrari. Renowned reliability they always had. And as a driver, that's what you wanted to be in, quite honestly. Either one. The record is unsurmountable, the Porsche, especially at Le Mans. Yeah, to have that opportunity, was a lot of pleasure because we finished third, but we were just behind it, the full factory team, which they won too. And actually, they had trouble right at the end. I think it was determined that 1 or 2 laps we would have won that race because they both had a turbocharger problem. Nevertheless, on a podium it was a good beginning with my son Michael alongside, and of course Philippe Ayot. It was a good podium.
So the last time you and I got together, we talked about how you helped Team Lotus and Colin Chapman develop ground effects in the Type 79, and you saw that technology carry through into the sports car and endurance world, especially at Le Mans. Here we are in the 80s, moving into 1988, where you mentioned earlier you were running the Porsche 962 with Michael and your nephew John. And so these were full ground effect cars. And so I want to take a moment to kind of compare and contrast the 962 to everything else you've driven up until that point, because a lot of us hold the 962 in massive regard as probably one of the most legendary endurance cars of all time. So kind of walk us through that experience and that technology change from the Lotus 79 and what you helped develop to that point in 1988, almost 10 years later.
Well, obviously, you learn more. You develop, and all of a sudden with the sports car, you have a lot more square inch area to deal with as far as your diffusers and so on and so forth. So even though obviously it's regulated, if you will, the diffuser exits and so forth, but still no ground effect downforce is what drivers we love because, you have more speed through the corners. That's the whole objective. To me, all the drivers, I'm sure, we welcome that feature, no question. The unfortunate thing, everybody else had it too. So all you did is just go faster, which is great. I remember clearly that getting away from Le Mans at Daytona, Michael and I were the first ones to drive at 962, because usually Le Mans was a 956. 962 was for US because it had single turbocharger. And we were the first ones. Actually, I was on pole at Daytona, and we had a gearbox issue. Actually, I was at the infancy of ground effects for Porsche because the 962 at the beginning was like a lot of air cooling in the engine. And so for qualifying, they blocked the air intakes underneath, and you gain tremendous amount of downforce, obviously, because of that. But in the race, they had to obviously keep that open. So in the race, it was not the same. But here at the beginning and so on and so forth, the 962 was full downforce, the maximum that could be allowed under the rules. And it was an awesome car to drive. Absolutely.
Well, I have a very specific question from Neil here. So this goes back to the 1988 race. You against the factory Porsche team with Stuck, Bell, and Ludwig in the car. They were the expected winners. What were you, Michael, and John told to do? Like, was this still a time of team orders and rank and file and things like that? Were you told to take it easy? You just had to bring the car home? What was the plan? And did you feel like you could beat the Jaguars?
Well, we felt that we could beat the Jaguars, but there was a strange rule in place in 1988. There was the maximum amount of fuel that you could burn for, with any car. Kind of was a stupid rule, but that's it. You had to go by it. Quite honestly, the engineer, Mr. Singer, Herbert Singer, I loved the man. I really did. And I think he liked us. And he knew that we would obey his orders. And there was no order as far as, who does whatever. It's just that who just follows the strategy. He said, if by 1 a.m, he said, you're on a fuel mark, he said, no deficit, you probably have a chance to win the race. There, the big competition was with the Jaguars. And our teammates were in deficit of fuel, something like actually 5 or 7 liters, which can mean you have to stay in the pits for that long, like for maybe 30 seconds, sometimes a minute, because you won't have fuel to finish. And we were right on. And then what happened? We lost an injector. We went on 5 cylinders. Obviously not a disappointment. With a Porsche, here we go. And we from 1 a.m. until the finish, we had to go on 5 cylinders. We lost the cylinders, and we still finished. We finished 6th. And what helped us to stay somewhat competitive was that it rained for at least 3 or 4 hours, which helped. But at Le Mans, especially straight line, we lost tremendous amount of straight line speed, obviously, and that's a big penalty there. So, going back to the question, did we have any orders? Okay, there were no orders at all that I know, because going in, you never know what's going to happen. If there was going to be an order, it was going to be maybe toward the end or something, because of points. But, we did what we needed to do as far as the staying right within that allowed fuel burn and so forth. And we were right on it. I had all the faith in the world in Mr. Singer, because, his experience and I know that he liked us as well.
And what's great about this time period here in the late 80s, especially early 90s, you're still running an IndyCar or kart, whichever name you want to use at that time.
Yeah.
So if you compare your IndyCar to the 962, maybe it's apples and oranges. And I want to ask, which one did you like better? But were they similar in a way to drive, or were they just totally different animals?
Absolutely, totally different animals. I mean, you talk about the weight factor, the size. When you go from one discipline to the other, usually there's a lot of, adaptation that you have to deal with to be able to extract everything out of it. So you cannot compare a sports car with an open wheel with a single seater. You just cannot compare that. The sports prototypes are a lot of fun. I mean, I enjoyed it. I mean, every bit about it. It's not to be compared with the single seater.
1988 is the second to last year of the open straightaway, the open Mulsanne. As we jump your story forward, you return to Le Mans in the 90s, 3 times in a row, 95, 96, and 97 with the Courage team. Outside of that major change, and let's talk about the lap itself, what else about Le Mans had changed from the 80s into the mid-90s?
When were the Porsche curves introduced? I'm trying to think, because that was a huge, huge change there. White House Corner, I think it was called, was eliminated, which you were going through a narrow bridge and all that sort of thing. That was a very dangerous part. Probably the most dangerous part of the lap, before they changed it. I don't remember exactly when, but I'm glad that I had the opportunity to drive that too, as a comparison to the course.
So the 90s, the Courage team, 3 in a row. What happened?
The first one there, we should have won that one. I made a mistake very close to the beginning. The car that I wanted to overtake was a car in front. It was really quite slow in the wet. Hans Stuck was one of the drivers there, and I was surprised, that he was that slow. But I figured, okay, it's Hans Stuck. He'll know that I'm coming up to overtake him. I was a bit too anxious. I should have waited through the S's there, and he pushed me in the grass, and I spun and hit the guardrail with the left side. And of course, bent. Body wasn't as bad, but there was a wishbone that needed to be changed. And unfortunately, they were not really ready for it. So it took a lot longer than we thought. I felt the responsibility to really get a lot of the time back. And I was driving like a man possessed, especially at night. And there was a time when it was some wet driving. And again, I got back, more almost all the time that we had. It's still plenty of time to go. And then Bob Volek had a problem. He spun at something on a bush curve, so we lost some more time there. And then we were recovering, but we needed a few more laps. At the end, we were about 4 minutes behind, and we couldn't recover that because obviously our car was quicker than the McLarens that won. The only thing I can tell you, I had a lot of fun because I drove my butt off, and I loved that because, we had nothing to lose. And I was qualifying every lap. And I remember one of my guys, JF Thorman was on the side. He said, "Oh, unbelievable the laps you're running." you're turning, so that part was fun, but we missed out. We finished second, but first in class. So I can claim I won Le Mans. If you win class, you still win, right?
That's true.
And I have a trophy upstairs to prove it. So it should have been overall, obviously, but a win is a win. I probably had more fun than if we would have just cruised around and, and won that way.
Outside of the other changes to the track with the addition of the chicane bus stop there on the Mulsanne, did you like that addition, slowing the cars down a bit instead of what you were used to, the full bore down the straightaway all the way down to Mulsanne corner?
I liked it because there was another breaking point for overtaking whatever, and quite honestly, made it a little more technical because the chicane at Mulsanne, I think it's well done. It's not a Mickey Mouse chicane, it's like a proper corner. So I think it was needed because, you love the high speed, but something happens and so forth. Before that chicane, we were reaching, 220, 230 miles an hour on the straightaway. I know I did that 1 a.m. or something with the Mark II. We were about 235 miles an hour way back when.
Those speeds were absolutely unbelievable.
Crazy speeds.
When you look at the 917s and the GT40s, all these cars doing 200 plus mile an hour, it's absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
Again, back to back to back, 3 years in a row. So 96 and 97, you're back with the Courage team. Any significant stories you can share with us about 96 and 97?
It's crazy that I didn't have a lot of luck there for some reason. I think in 96, we were running quite well. What did we do? I tried to outbreak into the Indianapolis corner, one of the Porsches, and locked the fronts. I went into the sandbox. That was embarrassing. Yeah.
So you mentioned luck, and one of my predecessors on this program used to bring up when talking to the Le Mans legends, he had this saying that was Le Mans chooses its winner. You don't get to choose whether you win Le Mans or not. Do you feel that that's true? Is there a certain bit of, mystique or superstition there that Le Mans chooses its winner?
Well, it's true. This winner, in a sense, because of so much can happen in the 24-hour period. In my situation, I said, okay, I was unlucky. Some of it the unluck I brought on myself, quite honestly, because I must admit that many times I was caught up in a moment that I could have let things go. But my specialty was not long distance. I'm only thinking of the moment. I said, oh, gosh, why did I push that? And this was one stupid mistake that I would like to have another crack at, So I follow my sword when I need to, and some of the situation I brought on myself, quite honestly. The fact is, my competitive spirit, was, a little bit too aggressive there for long distance. But, I guess I was about to change for some reason. I'm looking at the results here in my 9. There were a lot of DNFs here. Nevertheless, I got quite a bit of satisfaction out of it, out of my time there. Just being at Le Mans. I just love driving that course. I just truly did.
And what's really fun about this discussion, 9 times at Le Mans, we've only talked about 8 of them so far. And I held the best one for last because if it isn't incredible enough until this point, and people I'm sure are searching and Googling like, oh, Mario's time at Le Mans, race results you're looking at as well from the time. But in 2000, it's not that long ago, you returned to Le Mans at the age of 60 and attempted the race one more time. And I find that just mind-blowing because how many professional drivers can say, I returned to the track at that age and competed in the 24 hours? So this time you partner with Panos in the LMP1 Roadster S. And when you look at the, again, mid-90s to the 2000s, it's another jump from the last time you went to Le Mans. So the circuit has changed again. It has evolved. So I want to get your thoughts on that 9th entry at Le Mans. What was going through your head at 60 years old, looking back over that time?
Well, here again, I look forward to that. As you can see, that was actually my very last professional race of my career. Driving with David Brabham and Jan Magnussen, I think it was actually a great opportunity to be with those 2 drivers. And there's 2 things that happened. One, the left front tire blew up on me once along the way, and that's going into Indianapolis, actually. But I didn't crash. Fortunately, did some damage, to the body because of the high speed. Got in the grass a bit, but I brought it back to the pits. And then at night, I was really, really running well. Actually, they were very happy, the competitive times that we were doing. And then there was a crash. I think it was one of the GT Porsches. There were a lot of bits on the track, and I was just coming in to change, at the end of my stint. And was something in the middle of the track that went underneath. The oil filter somehow stood out outside of the body underneath, and it caught the oil filter. I felt something drag, but I had no idea. And then when I think it was David that took over, they were ready to go. They were all happy, and all of a sudden, smoke. They didn't know what it was, and they, lost time there to change the oil filter or whatever. So we lost quite a bit of time there, and that's why we finished 16th or something.
For our listeners who have never been to Le Mans before, they may only be familiar with watching the race on television, right? The actual dedicated 24 hours of Le Mans. But the race itself is more than just the spectacle, over the Saturday and Sunday. It takes place over the entire week, sometimes longer. There's testing, there's night practice, there's scrimmages, qualifiers, all this kind of thing. And so that adds to the stress level of every pro driver and to the car. I mean, by the time you run the 24 hours, and in some cases, the car's already run the 24-hour by the time you get to the race. Thinking about Le Mans holistically, what do you feel is the most challenging part of driving Le Mans?
Well, it's the physical side. To be able to stay sharp physically, you're basically spent nowadays. That's why in those days there were 3 drivers, but I already drove and we were 2 drivers, at the beginning. But 3 drivers, it was actually quite a relief, and now they have 4 drivers, which I think it's a good idea as long as all 4 are up to the same level. Yeah, I mean, it's the physical side of it, no question about it. And as you said, there's a lot of activity. I mean, if you pull the short straw, sometimes they say, okay, you're going to do the morning warm-up at 9 in the morning, so you have to get up at 7, and then you have to stay up all 24 hours, which the race starts at 2 in the afternoon or something. So you get a little extra, and I think I do the shorts twice. I think I had to do that. So as you can see, like I said, from a physical level, you really have to prepare properly. And that's what it's about. I mean, it's equal for everyone, but that's the other challenge that you have, not just a mechanical challenge. You sure in the world don't want to leave anything on the table just because you're tired or because, you're not functioning 100%. So that's a matter of pride. So that's one thing that can tell you clearly. I don't think I've given up an ounce in that respect. That was a real challenge, to be right on. And again, that's another one of those things you have to pay a lot of attention to stay hydrated, all the things.
And I'm glad you brought up the physical side of racing, because multiple of our audience had either sent in a question like that or even posted it here in the chat. And they wanted to know about the physical fitness part. If you think about it today, all these pro drivers, they have simulators and reaction time testing and physical trainers and strict diets and teams of people. You were jumping from discipline to car to races all over the world. And so for you, was it just another day at the office, or how were you keeping yourself physically prepared, even mentally prepared for all these races, especially for the 24-hour Le Mans?
Well, Eric, you have to realize what you're up against, and you prepare accordingly. And you know what's going to be daunting, whether it's any long distance race is that long distance, and you better be up for it. As you said, we had some professional help even in those days, as far as people making sure that we have the proper meals and whatever and all of that, and stay hydrated, and then we will have somebody to do some massaging and whatever. There was even one of the races we had a hyperbaric chamber where you could go in there and take a bit of a nap, but I'm claustrophobic, so I couldn't use that. I was in there and I was going crazy. So anyway, but usually the teams, they have professionals, to help you along that area.
Another thing that comes up when discussing the 24-hour Le Mans and how demanding it can be for a driver are the weather conditions. It is so variable. There's other tracks, Spa, Watkins Glen, the Nürburgring are like this too, where you could be on one side of the track, it's completely dry, and on the other side, it's downpouring and everything in between. But Le Mans also has this added bonus of hitting around the summer solstice. It's the longest day of the year with the shortest amount of nighttime. Driving in all those conditions, obviously every driver wants to drive the perfect lap when it's sunny in the middle of the day without the sun in their eyes. But talk about driving in the wet and talk about driving at night. How bad is it at Le Mans?
I'm glad you mentioned that actually, because, even going back to 95, I made the most of that at night. There was quite a few hours of wet. And I stayed in the car because the worst thing to do is to be, to interrupt the stint and put a fresh driver in there in the middle of the night. Whoever starts the part, drive most of the night. And that's where I made up tremendous amount of time. As much as you figure, oh man, it's daunting in the wet. You never know what's going to happen and the visibility factor and everything. But I said, this is an opportunity. That's where I was making time like crazy. Especially I could see when even in our own class, when they would have a driver change, it takes 2-3 laps for the individual to get acquainted with the conditions, if you will. And I can tell you one thing, the breaking point at the end of Mulsanne, most of the time you couldn't even see, where the breaking point. And there was a church steeple on the right beyond the trees. And it was like a bit foggy and messy, And I was judging myself to that church steeple, and I could go probably another maybe 100 meters or so. And then definitely, that was my breaking point. I said, if that church ever moves, I'm done. That church really, really helped me because I didn't have to hunt for it.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I can still see it.
So a question from our audience that falls right in line with this. Matthew asks, did you find noticeable differences in your ability to stay sharp for the whole race throughout your entire career there at Le Mans?
You know your own self, as far as what you can do and how you can extend yourself. And you'd be surprised how, obviously toward the end of the race, obviously you're pretty spent. But as soon as you get in the car and all of the thing that requires, the speed up, you just wake right up. I mean, your senses just sharpen up immediately and you just go, to be honest with you. And there was some other one racer, I thought that, how can I go back in the cockpit? It was at Sebring with Bruce McLaren, because, well, anyway, it was one of the hardest races of my life. But you back in, man, you just somehow your senses just pick right up and you go. Then you die again when you come out. And it's just, what it is, it's adrenaline. All of a sudden you're living on pure adrenaline at that point. And there's a story about my life too, my long career. When I actually came out of the cockpit officially, I had some issues that I could not understand. And I was under the temperature of a professor at the University of Pennsylvania who, by me telling him stories about my life, my career, he said, I have it now. He says, the most part of your life, he said, you've been an adrenaline junkie and your senses, your body thinks you're dead. Believe it or not, it took me like 5 years to kind of start reclaiming myself. And it's when I got in the cockpit again to test at Indianapolis for Tony Kanaan, I was going to have to qualify for him in 2003. Just as I'm in the car on the first run, all of a sudden, I just resuscitated. I mean, I was in my element again, and I realizing what's been happening all my life. But it's amazing how your body just gets attuned to something, and it sort of helps you deal with that. But then if you change it dramatically, like I did, all of a sudden, your senses are somewhat, I don't know, confused, if you will. And that's what's happening. It's something that was interesting, talking with this professor, but he was right. He said it'd probably take you 2, 3, 4 years, to just get back to what you're okay again.
You mentioned earlier about switching between disciplines, and we highlighted the fact that there were gaps between your entries at Le Mans. And so when you think about it, coming into the 60s, you had done tons of oval track, stock car, sprint car, and you brought that knowledge and that experience with you to Le Mans. And then you go back, and then Formula One happens, and then you bring that to Le Mans, and then you go back in IndyCar, and you have this leapfrog in between. Even though you brought a ton of experience with you to Le Mans, What did Le Mans teach you, and what did you take back to those other disciplines of racing every time you went back sort of to your day job?
Well, I tell you what it teaches you. It teaches you on this is that you'd be surprised sometimes when you start more, relaxing to some degree, how you start doing the perfect lap and you're still quick and you take less out of the car, especially in those days where reliability factor was a big, big, big thing, and even especially in the short races. To be able to just get to that zone. Long distance race, the beautiful thing about it, between stints, you think about this and that, a lot of things, then you go back and you're trying this, you have the luxury to try so many things. And you said to yourself, I'm going to try to do the perfect lap, come off the same revs where I want, because you always feel when you have good acceleration off the corner, you see it, you see that at the end of the straightaway and all that, you just measure yourself. There's always something that you learn. And yes, and in long distance, as I say, you have the luxury to keep trying and trying different things every time you're in the car. Maybe it's just small nuances, not big changes. But those are the things that make all the difference, in the end. So, no question. I mean, that it's a great, great test bed for any driver, if you really try to pay attention to a lot of things.
So Scott asks, what is your favorite corner or section of the Circuit de la Sarthe? Do you have a favorite track outside of all of the ones that we've already talked about?
People ask that often, what's your favorite corner, this and that. And I don't have a favorite corner. It's just that I think, quite honestly, slight bit of banking, you could really lean into the front going into Indianapolis. That's what they call Indianapolis, and I sort of like that. I really tried to measure myself how deep I could go into it and just take advantage of what it get. But other than that, I like all the corners.
So there's no least favorite at Le Mans?
No least favorite, quite honestly.
One of the most popular questions from our audience of all the mail-ins that we got, I kind of summarized it and created one question for you. You've driven a long list of cars over your career. Which was your favorite or most memorable, and why?
I'll give you a short answer to that. Every car that I could win a race with. That's it. That's all I can tell you. Nothing that can top that. People ask me the same thing about what's your favorite track. Any track I want to race. That's it. That's the ultimate, the only objective you have, as a race driver, to win. And that's your memory. That's the golden memory. And you fall in love with the car you're in because it gave you that. It gave you the opportunity. And so, yes, that's the only way I can put it.
So that leads into another one. By May, what was the best racing moment in your career?
I must say, because of what really drew me to the sport, what attracted me at a young age, a young teenager, the day that I clinched the Formula One World Championship. I've been fortunate when, as you say, premier races like, the Indy 500 and all that. And even winning the Indy 500 was a great day. But my thing was winning the championship, a national championship, because that's encompasses the whole season, So I won 4 of those, and winning a world championship, and another championship, the dirt track championship, all of those, But, to answer your question, the favorite moment that obviously really, really brought it all together for me was when the ultimate dream for me started, and that's winning the world championship.
Well, Mario, we are heading into our wrap-up segment here, and I'm going to morph Christopher's question into my question, which is sort of along the lines of, if you go back to Le Mans, and if you're a fan now, would you just watch the race? But we'll take it a little further and say, if someone asks you today, why should I go or watch the 24 Hours of Le Mans, what would you say to them?
I'm going to watch it from the hotel, on television. Well, you see what I mean? It's to watch it there. When you've been in a car, done that, to be honest with you, I'm not a good spectator. If I had one of my own, maybe driving, if you will, then it's a different story. But just to go watch, I'll watch, just periodic during the race and be interested. But if you were in a car, you've done that, watching is not really my rodeo.
Well, you've seen a lot of change in the last 58 years since your first Le Mans. So, what are some of the highlights that you would say that have come out of Le Mans since your very, very first trip there that you would communicate to somebody that maybe is interested for the first time?
What's beautiful today is the reliability of the cars due to the proper rules. Today, barring mistakes or something, usually you have the best chance of finishing than ever before. And that's why the races are daunting, because all the top competitors, can be right there until the end and fighting hard. That's the beauty of today's long distance sports car racing. And the way actually some of the U.S. races and the sims are run in IMSA, they have different ruling. When the yellow come out, you regroup and all that. If you have problems along the way, you have a chance to recoup and during the yellow. That's a good thing, obviously. You never feel you're totally out of the race that way. The races are as competitive as ever because of this. And that's why, even from a spectator standpoint, you know that there's so much to look forward to, because most of your favorites will still be there at the end. And that's a great thing. That's a plus.
So, our final question, Mario. I've been waiting to ask this since the last time we got together.
Do you have a car for me?
That's the answer, right? You hinted at going after some records even at your spry age of 85 years old now, right?
Four.
Yeah, there you go. Almost, right? So what's next, Mario? And let's add to that, what's next for Andretti Autosport as part of the future of Le Mans?
Well, they obviously they're going to be there this year, and that's another chapter for the Andretti Global, if you will. Now, I'm very proud of my son Michael. He wants to be part of all the major disciplines in our sport. That's certainly one of them. Yeah, we're all excited about that, and because of that, one of these days I might be there as well. So.
Well, before I do the outro, I want to pass the baton quickly to ACO USA President David Lowe. Do you have any parting words for Mario before I close out?
Mario, it was certainly an honor and a pleasure to have you on. I know the members were very, very excited and looked forward to this for quite some time. So it was very gracious of you to share your time with us this evening. Thank you so much.
Well, my pleasure. I enjoy that. This always brings back some fun memories for sure.
Mario Andretti remains one of the greatest ambassadors and one of the most respected voices in motorsport. You can follow Mario on social media by finding him on Twitter at Mario Andretti, on Instagram at Andretti Mario, and on Facebook at Mario Andretti Official. Be sure to visit his official website at marioandretti.com for more updates on what's next for Mario. And on behalf of everyone here and those listening at home, thank you for sharing your stories with us, because it doesn't get bigger in racing than the name Mario Andretti, a name everyone knows, past, present, and future petrolheads alike. Someone all of us can relate to. So we hope you enjoyed this presentation and look forward to more Evenings with a Legend throughout the season. With that, thank you, Mario.
Thank you. Grazie mille.
Arrivederci, as they say, right?
Arrivederci. Thank you. Thank you.
This episode has been brought to you by the Automobile Club of the West and the ACO USA. From the awe-inspiring speed demons that have graced the track to the courageous drivers who have pushed the limits of endurance, the 24 Hours of Le Mans is an automotive spectacle like no other. For over a century, the 24 Hours Le Mans has urged manufacturers to innovate for the benefit of future motorists, and it's a celebration of the relentless pursuit of speed and excellence in the world of motorsports. To learn more about or to become a member of the ACO USA, look no further than www.lemans.org. Click on English in the upper right corner, and then click on the ACO Members tab for club offers. Once you've become a member, you can follow all the action on the Facebook group ACO USA Members Club and become part of the legend with future Evening with the Legend meetups. This episode has been brought to you by Grand Touring Motorsports as part of our Motoring Podcast Network. For more episodes like this, tune in each week for more exciting and educational content from organizations like the Exotic Car Marketplace, the Motoring Historian, Break Fix, and many others. If you'd like to support Grand Touring Motorsports and the Motoring Podcast Network, sign up for one of our many sponsorship tiers at www.patreon.com/GT Motorsports. Please note that the content, opinions, and materials presented and expressed in this episode are those of its creator, and this episode has been published with their consent. If you have any inquiries about this program, please contact the creators of this episode via email or social media as mentioned in the episode.